Hey everybody, this is TCL 62's week 6 now, week 7, week 6, and minus 1 weeks here into the project. We will have officially 2 more weeks of doing stuff coming up. And as such, kind of a couple more sessions as well, including our final kind of wrap up session. So let's see. I'll just pivot right over to Grace to have us start walking through what we did this week, and then we'll do our retro, and then we'll talk about the fun stuff coming up. So handing it over to you.
Good morning, y'all. Who wants to present their issue first? Any volunteers?
I am still waiting for Archa. And yeah, so if Danny and Hans can start, that would be nice.
Yeah, that works. Hans, if you're good with that.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Let me start up my dev server. Okay. And share my screen. Let's see. Hans, I don't know if you have a preference of kind of walking us through either like the feature or the code. Doesn't matter to me.
I'm not picky. Do you want to maybe like split it up? You can talk about the changes we made within the components, and I'll talk about the changes we made to the Firebase.
Love it. Love it. Cool. Okay. So our task this week was adding functionality to delete an item from the database. And so we have this, well, actually, let me also bring up Firebase so we can see it on both sides. Okay, let's see. What is the name of the list here? Inspect. Okay, role access boast. Role access boast. Okay, so let's delete oat milk. Okay, so I'm going to tap the delete button, which we added, and we have a built-in window like confirm pop-up that asks, are you sure you want to delete this item? If you press cancel, nothing should happen, which is good. The oat milk is still there. If we tap OK, then it will delete both from the app as well as you probably saw, yeah, it's no longer, the oat milk is no longer in our database. And so let's hop over to the code. So the main changes that we made in the code was in the list item component. And so we added, here you can see on line 59, the button that we added, and we added an on-click handler, which is outlined on line 39, starting on 39, which first gives that pop-up window, and we, as suggested in the story, we use the window.confirm built-in method. And then so essentially this method returns true or false if the user clicks OK, then it'll return true. So we're saying if the user clicks OK, then we'll run this delete item function, which is defined in our Firebase file, which Hans, if you want to chat about this.
Yeah. Sure. So that was the kind of like the second part of this deal here. We up on the imports, there's a built-in Firebase method called delete doc, which we imported in. And then for the delete item function, it's just pretty straightforward as far as like the rest of the functions within the Firebase that do any kind of changes to it. We just there was the empty delete item function within there on line 128 when we first started this thing. For that, we're just putting in the list and the item ID as parameters for the function, and then we got a document reference constant in there that just drills directly into what we're trying to do. We're not trying to delete the entire list. We're not trying to delete elements of the list item. We're just trying to delete the item within a list itself. So the delete doc ref just kind of leapfrogs directly down to the item ID, which is what we're targeting, and then we return using the delete doc method that's built in, just deleting that document reference. That's why when you go back to both the database and the application, when you click delete and then confirm that deletion, it is gone forever.
Cool. Any questions?
Nope. Any particular challenges with Firebase or anything as you were running through this?
I had no issues with the Firebase side of things. On my end, I have had some weird browser interactions with the alert window. But we can keep that in there because it works just fine for the most part. Or once we get to the kind of styling side of things, we can maybe figure out a better a more reliable method of confirmation. But for now, it's either it both works or it can be a placeholder. But that was just a little bit of strangeness that I encountered on my end. I'm also using an old, it's the little laptop that could my machine, so that could also be part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you had thought at all about the fact that we will be doing prettying things up, and you're using something that is effectively under the control of the browser, not under control of you at the moment. So might need to add an additional component or something to handle that as we go. But for now, it's doing its job. So cool.
Awesome. Great job, guys. Magda, do you want to, I know that Archa isn't here yet, but do you want to go ahead and present your demo?
Sure, I'm gonna do the demo, and maybe Archa is gonna come and she's gonna do the code review because that was our plan. But if not, I will just try to do the code review also. Yes, let me just share my screen. Do you see the open smart shopping list?
Looks good.
Okay. So so our task, it was to sort the list by purchase urgency. So we have let me just join the list and I will show you. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm just gonna join the list that we already have. Okay. And as you see, in this list, we have some items, and we also have this indicator. So we had to add the indicator showing how fast, when we have to buy the next item, next item. Yes. So yes. So let me just go to console. And in console log, we can see the items here. And for now, we see that two of the items, bananas and bread, they have 6 days until next purchase. And we can see that they are sorted alphabetically. So the first is banana, and after that is bread. And also we see that the next item is ice cream, orange, and eggs, and they are also sorted in increasing order to the next purchase. Yes, and when we click the check button, yeah, that's the bug, what we have to still fix it. Yes, and when we click the buttons, we can see that in this console, the dates are changed. Yes, so now ice cream, it's the next time it's to buy soon. And now it's kind of soon. And inactive, we can click and it's not soon. And we can just keep clicking when the date is going to be less to change for the indicator to kind of soon, soon, and not soon. Yes, so that's the demo. And we have Arta. Arta, would you like to do the code review?
Might be still connecting in to the Zoom.
Okay.
Just showed up. But like perfect, amazing timing on that. So we'll like stall and
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get my headphones to connect.
you are
Okay.
totally fine. So yeah, you're seeing now the thing that I
Yes.
did point out with the clicky box behavior. Just sort of I would, kind of expect when I click a thing it to land on the bottom and be a little bit different. So we can talk a little bit like maybe during the planning session if we want to address that in a specific way. Because I imagine we'll be doing some things related to, look and feel and style and stuff that may or may not be touching the same area, but otherwise the sorting, it looked like it was handling it correctly via the dates that were on the attributes of the objects as they were coming out of Firestore. It looked like it was the actual clicking that wasn't maybe setting the date the right way that we wanted it. The other thing to point out is neither of these are merged yet.
Yes.
In both sets of code, they are touching the same lines of code, and they're actually touching the same space on the list as well. So we'll just want to be conscientious of that. I don't actually think it's a problem because I don't think the code conflicts, but it's just, that'd be like on the same lines. So you just want to watch for merge conflicts as that happens. And then the not soon indicator should probably be to the left of the delete button when that happens. Just see the order would be my preference, but it's up to you guys. Just calling out there's a merge conflict when you get ready to do it.
Yes.
Okay, did we stall enough?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I can share screen. Good morning, everybody. All right, so Magda, thanks for sharing the preview of the app. I'm just taking you all through some of our code. In Firebase.js, we created this very large function called compare purchase urgency. And we basically used a lot of logic to and a lot of kind of JavaScript built-in array sorting functions to get this array of data items in the right order. So Magda and I actually did we haven't cleaned this up yet, but we actually did some pseudo coding, and we kind of really tried to plan before we did just dove into writing the function. So you can, and then we kind of put our actual code in between the comments after we wrote out that pseudocode. So that helped a lot because it was pretty complex logic. And we had to do 3 rounds of filtering to get it into the right order. And then it essentially filters out inactive items, then filters the active items, which is the ones that are marked soon, kind of soon, not soon, in date order with a sub filter, and they're filtering it the same day. Our items need to be purchased in the same number of days alphabetically, and then it takes those inactive items and joins it onto the end of that filtered out array. So yeah, then we essentially called that function here in list, and we called it where we are setting the data. And I think maybe I just caught the tail end of that conversation. Maybe there's something a little weird about when it's getting checked that's happening. But Jeremiah helped us think through some of this logic of where exactly to call the function to make sure that it updates properly. So we created our own use effect here and then updated the use effect from whoever created that search feature to update that. Yeah, that's what we did in the code.
I do really appreciate, by the way, that there's a lot going on in that function. You did a pretty good job of trying to make it so that you could actually read through and see what was up. Like as a reader of the code. That's always really, really nice when that happens.
Well, that was it for demos. I think you guys all did a great job. We can talk about that bug either now or later. Or we can move on to retro.
I didn't quite catch exactly what the bug is, so maybe, but yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on that. I don't know, Magda, if you do.
If you click the date, or if you click the checkbox, the date for the next purchased date is actually getting set to today and not.
Oh yeah, actually, Jenny, I think that was an issue you and I came across because we're the one who wrote that function in a previous issue of because yeah, that's a totally different function than what Magda and I were working on. And yeah, do you remember that, Jenny, that we noticed that if the item's added today, the logic doesn't quite work out. And we were a little bit confused by it because we didn't actually write the logic for setting the next date. That logic was already included in the code.
Yeah, I remember that. And I'm not sure if the I don't know if that's like related, and then if does the filtering like function, does it also run when the box is checked?
So it basically, when the date next purchased changes, it triggers a change in that thing. But the date next purchased, so like our function that Magda and I worked on doesn't do anything with estimating the next date purchase. It just takes whatever's set as the date next purchase and then uses it to sort. And then you and I, Jenny, we worked on that code that sets the date next purchase, and it is inaccurately setting items that if you add them today and then also mark them as purchased today, it can't do a good job with the inbuilt logic or that was already existing.
That's right. Yeah. I remember that too. Yeah, it was we had noticed there was like it didn't logically make sense how the create the built-in method that we were working with kind of calculated that date next purchased.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it in that Firebase.js. It was like we
node modules, I think.
Yeah, I was in a really confusing place. I remember that.
So we don't really need to fix it right now, and I didn't spend a ton of time looking at it. But I can help dive in and debug or something too a little bit later, especially if we think it actually is coming from the included kind of API code. I actually kind of want to dig in a little bit and see if I can figure out what's going on there. So I don't know. I just dropped the link to the retro board in the chat. So we should move over to there. And I'm going to keep us moving relatively quickly through the retro because I would like to have as much time as possible to talk about the next bit of stuff that we want to do. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to say let's go to 15 after, and then we'll start talking about things. So hop in there and start adding items that you think for retro-y stuff, and we'll run them through real quick, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. I'll share my screen here too. All right. I muted, not muted, not muted. Okay. So anybody want to ask for more time, or do you think we got everything in and are ready to run through them?
I think we're
Alright.
good.
Cool. So I think that's Archie, you got the first 3 on there.
Yeah, just a general thank you
Cool.
to everyone for working either directly on Magda and my issue, especially Magda we spent so many hours working through that logic, and then for everyone for reviewing it because it had a lot of steps and directions for review.
Awesome. I love that. A very similar thank you to my other mentors and everybody else for having me not be in last week. I really appreciate it. We're all human beings. Stuff happens. Good for covering us. Let's see, who is this one? This one was,
I think that was me.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate Hans for doing some pre-work before we met up to go over to work on this week's story. Just made the session like super efficient. Really appreciate it. Just him thinking through some different options for our story.
Magda, looks like you got the next one.
Yes, so thanks, Hans, for working with me last week, and thanks for being so prepared and also for his thought process.
Alrighty, then we've got Hans. Looks like that was you.
That was me, yeah. Big old shout out to Magda and Archa for taking on such a heavy task and like presenting it in a way that was, easy to work through and understand what's going on. And then just also big shout out to Jenny, just like last time, an absolute delight to collaborate with.
And then Magda, looks like you're on the last one there.
Yes, that's me. And thanks, Archa, for working with me this week, for your thought process, and for your code review today.
It's like, Archie, we're now into the what went well.
Yeah, I'll just say both of mine now that we like Magda and I decided to meet Monday and like we needed all that time. So it was like good that we started early, and then also like at some point we merged Maine into our branch earlier on, so that way hopefully it's going to minimize merge conflicts when we dealt with some merge conflicts there, so hopefully that'll help minimize issues when we merge into Maine.
Great. I want to shout out that the PRs have been looking great. I think you guys have been taking it like to heart to make them informative, testable, easy to see what's going on. Really, again, appreciate that from a reviewing standpoint.
I think I'm next. Yeah, well, it went well working through the documentation with Hans this week, interacting with the Firebase database, and just getting practice like using the documentation.
Magda, I think you're on the next one there.
Yes, I think like Slack communications went well this week. So we try to like tell another group that we finish our PR and they can review. So yeah, I think that was good.
And then Hans, you're bringing up the rear there. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm sorry, are we doing the what went well or the improvement one?
What
We're
went
doing
well?
still what went well. Okay, yeah, just kind of it's a reiteration of what I put in the appreciations, but just well-written code across the board. Legible, easy to understand, organized, all that important stuff that sometimes gets forgotten when we're dealing with something heavy.
I agree. And I'm just gonna sum up because it looks like we have 3 comments that are about the same thing in the what could be improved in that. We're still not quite on time. I think we all know. We'll work on that going forward. Like I said before, acting like professionals already. Good job.
So I have a couple comments to add because you skipped my what went well.
Did I?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's at the very top.
Oh, my bad. Go for it. Knock yourself out. I'm sorry.
I'm happy that everyone has been taking advantage of office hours from what I hear. I hope that it's valuable to you guys because I know every time I see a cohort go through office hours, it's valuable to them. And I just want to make sure that you guys feel like you have everything you need from us as mentors. And I want to add to the what could be improved. I feel really bad because I realized I didn't review something until like this morning, so that was totally my fault.
I think that kind of falls under the lateness umbrella. It's a thing too, right? In the real world, having your PRs stuck waiting for reviews can be just as much of a drag on getting things in on time as getting the code in itself. It's something we all need to be conscientious of, as we go forward. And you want to be as proactive about that as possible when you get into the real world too. There is an art to nagging people to give you your request reviews. And it's a learned skill like everything else. So do we have any specific action items that we want to add to be aware of going forward, that we want to specifically call out at this time?
Not to get us too hung up on this, but please remind me, what are we considering to be action items? Is this just like things to be improved or things that need to be addressed within like the application, or?
These are things that we should specifically focus on working on for the next couple of weeks coming up. If I was being really diligent about this, I would say we actually probably want SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-based things that we want to be specific and work on. I'm not going to hold us to that on these things today, but if there is something that we would like to call out that we should specifically pay attention to, now would be the time that we want to do that. Just saying like, hey, let's try and get all of our pull requests open by Wednesday or something would be an example of that, right? That won't actually apply this week. So
I think we wanted to look into the bug with us estimating the next purchase date.
yeah. So let's do that. Grace, do we want to kind of fold that in as part of our discussion for upcoming items, or do we want to kind of, you think, leave that as more of a side discussion to have async later? Kind of open to opinions on that.
I think it should be a separate discussion because I know the last issue, everyone's going to be swarming this issue. But if we have any free time, anyone who wants to devote a little bit of extra time to that, I think it's a worthy thing to take a look at. But I don't want to take away from the main issue as well.
Yeah, and I'm a little hesitant to either. So why don't, and then I'd kind of want to take a look at it. So I might take a swing at it a little bit later today, and then I will post in Slack kind of what I think got going on, and I might just open up a pull request myself if I see a easy solution for it, unless anyone has a particular desire to go and chase it down themselves at the moment.
We could pair on it if you want.
Okay, sure. Relatively open today. So if you got something you want to, we'll talk. Let's throw that into Slack async, and we'll discuss how we want to tackle it. And if anybody else wants to join us doing a pairing session or something with it, we can find some time to get that done. Okay. Sorry. So I'm trying to get us to a point where we can talk about this other one because I want to give you all as much time as possible. So we've got about 20 minutes left to kind of dig in. So I've got the project brief up here. So for our last 2 weeks, these are our pairs. So Jenny and Magda, Hans and Archa, and then Magda and Hans and Jenny and Archa. But I want to encourage you all to kind of self-organize as much as possible and determine kind of the things that we want to do. And if it makes sense to retain these pairings and bite off chunks of work, I'd say go for it. If there are other things though that like maybe don't fit with the paradigm, let's feel free to kind of be a little bit more loose and do the right thing for getting done what it is that we kind of want to get done. So I say all this to preface that the upcoming issue is this. And I'm going to read through this real quick, and then I'm actually going to hand Grace. I'm sorry, we're winging it right now, but I'm going to hand that over to you to kind of talk through a little bit too, because I know you've got some thoughts about this type of thing, and we'll just talk it all out and see kind of how we feel and what we want to go after and tackle. So, as a user, I want the app to look professional and welcoming. The last 2 weeks of this project will function a little differently than the rest. Your team will self-organize around a lightweight design process to come up with a polished look and feel for your application. This will require you to make decisions together as a whole team and then implement your vision. The process outlined here is our best suggestion for how to proceed, but you are free to take whatever approach you see fit. So kind of what I was just alluding to a second ago. You'll notice that this is the last issue on the board, and that's because the expectation is for you to write stories you need to complete the implementation of your design direction. As always, lean on your mentors for guidance if you are unsure how to proceed. So there's a handful of bullet points here on the design process. I'll just run through them real quick. And then, yeah, like I said, Grace, I don't want to take away from, you talking any thoughts you might have here. So design process, what is the tone that you're going for? What are the feelings you are trying to convey? Come up with 3 to 5 words that best capture how you want users to perceive your app. Do you want it to be fun, clean, ironic, business-like? There's a whole list of other words you can look at in terms of direction for theming. You could create a mood board. Mood board helps everyone get on the same page in terms of the direction that you want to take your design. Add elements to the board that represent the tone you're trying to achieve, and decide on fundamental elements of your design, including the following. So typography, what fonts and such you'd like to have. There's hundreds of them. I'd say watch out for ones that are paid licensing things, but honestly, it's not too hard to get a whole bunch of free fun ones that are out there. Colors, it's very important, although just make sure that you got an eye for accessibility as you're going through it. And iconography and imagery. Again, what other sort of visual elements you want to add to the page. Decide whether you want to code CSS from scratch or use a CSS framework. There's definitely pros and cons to each. Vanilla CSS gives you more control, but it can be a pain in the neck to deal with. Frameworks help you get things done faster, but you have to play by their rules. And if you do want to use a framework, make sure you pick one that will suit your needs. And there's some stuff down there about some different frameworks and do they have good docs? Are they easy to use? Are they accessible and that kind of thing? So, okay, I ran through it, laid it all out. Grace, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes. So this is the what I consider to be the most fun part of the project. Being a front-end engineer, this is my favorite part. So I want you guys to think about what you want to achieve. One of the notes here is to write the stories that are needed to complete the implementation of your design direction. So you do kind of get a little bit more into agile and think about if you guys want to have a planning session synchronously and meet up or async, you're welcome to do that. Definitely, if you have questions on how to outline what you want to achieve, I'm totally open this week. I'll be holding office hours, so you're more than welcome to ping me so we can figure out a good time for when you want to discuss this. I definitely want you guys to enjoy this part of the process because it is a lot of fun, and it does take a little bit more of a design eye, which I feel like you guys have. So I think this is going to be a really great part of the project for all of you. And you all work really well together. The only thing that I personally recommend is when you come to the build versus buy part of the equation. I personally love using CSS frameworks. My favorite is Tailwind, but you're more than welcome to choose and experiment with any other ones that you want to try. If you want to think about corporate UI frameworks, there's stuff like Material UI from Google. I'm totally blanking on the other ones, but that's one thing that I've used personally as well.
There's so many things out there.
Yeah. So definitely just have fun with it. And we don't want to just make sure that when you're thinking about the scope of this project, we don't want to encroach on your time. So Keep it small, keep it not minimal, but keep it attainable. Because you can run away with so many different ideas with design. So we just want to make sure that you guys stick to more or less the 5 hours of the recommendation, because it can just kind of run away. So just keep that in mind. And like I said, office hours, I can send a doodle for planning that, and please feel free to pick my brain, because this is like literally my favorite part. That's it.
Okay, so let's open it up to you. Ask questions, and or if you got thoughts and you just like already have things you just want to go dive in, throw that out there too. Here you go. What you got?
I can make like a little thread in our Slack channel to see if it's possible for all four of us to meet together. I think that would be helpful for planning. And we could just, start by following some of these steps suggested. And maybe use like a Figma Jamboard or something and brainstorm some ideas. If y'all are open to that, I'm happy to suggest some times on Slack and
Sounds good. Thank you.
yeah, also just I was thinking maybe right now, since we still have a couple of minutes, it could be a good idea to just share like how we feel about front end. Like I know some people are really into it, some people aren't. Magda and I were talking about it this week. She was like, that's sort of like I got into design life, and just like maybe if we use some of these frameworks and things like that, we can talk about maybe like what we're comfortable with, what maybe we're interested in learning. Yeah. Someone has to go first.
Does anyone already have a vision in mind? You've got something you want to go out and execute? Okay. How about anybody have a particular CSS framework that you've used that you're, or component library or something that you're fond of already that you want to advocate for? I think Jeremiah in the last cohort was like pretty hot on Chakra at that point. Sounds like Grace and I are
I
both
can
on
share
Team
some of
Tailwind.
my I guess front end design experience. So yeah, I enjoy doing front end stuff. I like thinking about design a lot. I definitely like using frameworks. I feel like I'm always beating my head against a wall if I do raw CSS. So I have used Tailwind and Chakra UI. I've also used styled components, which is not exactly a framework, but just like a better way of organizing raw CSS, I guess, rather than just having like a giant main CSS file. I personally think Chakra UI is like really user friendly, has like a really small learning curve. Tailwind has like a way steeper learning curve than Chakra UI. So of the two that I have used, that's the one that I lean towards for, especially between like in the scope of how much time we have. I also really like thinking about stuff like color palettes and fonts, and I like browsing fonts on Google Fonts. I like to use Coolers, which is a really cool website that does like palette generating. So yeah, that's just stuff that my experience with it and stuff I enjoy with it. Yeah, love to hear other devs.
Yeah, I'm also I enjoy kind of thinking about the UI of an app. I've used like Bootstrap, uh and so yeah, and I enjoy using a framework just because it's like faster. So I think personally I would like to get some experience working with like more commonly used or more like prevalent frameworks, just to be more marketable in the job search. But definitely want to like keep in mind the scope of the project and make sure we're not keeping it within our time frame.
So this is a good way for you guys to practice parallel working, because one person can be doing one thing, another person can be doing another thing. This is very common, at least in my team, where when we're working on an idea, we form different parts of the project and just tackle each part individually. I don't know if this is your experience as well. So I think this is going to be a really great experience in terms of how professional teams work. So I'm really excited for you guys.
I always find myself in the role of, I can make things go on the UI pretty well. I have no vision for what it should look like. So I usually like to try and find myself with a designer or a design inclined person who can like do the navigating, and then I can do the driving and doing the implement, part. So in that kind of way with pairing, and I've actually been doing that quite a bit at my current job recently. I've done that a handful, in prior jobs too. But yeah, it's been kind of my experience, is me just sitting there daily like, okay, well, what if I change this property? You like it? I change this one, you like it? How about this color? How about this animation? And that kind of thing. And like, but yeah, I have almost no opinions on what it should be. So I'm just like, someone else needs to tell me how this is supposed to look, because I'll make it ugly as I'll get out if I don't have somebody keeping me honest.
Yeah, I guess I'll
I
kind of
really
just throw
feel
out there
you.
for.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh no, I think Magda and I have a feeling we're both about to agree with Lyle in that sense, where like I personally, like, as far as my interest with UI and UX goes, like I care a lot about the ways in which a user experiences an application and stuff. I don't care how it looks, to a certain extent, color palettes, routed corners, things like that. I'm not particularly interested or precious about, but I do care a lot about just like the way that they experience an error, or the way that they um, you know, have like any kind of like login page or things like that. That's kind of like where my interest is at. So I will, while working on this, just throwing it out there, I am gladly going to, I'll provide input if I have an opinion, but I am happy to let other folks kind of take the helm on the way that this appearance should go. Totally, just like I'll let people with better style than me make those decisions.
I feel the same. Like, I don't have a division how that should look. And like a button is just a button for me, and it works. So why I have to have different color of it? So yeah, I'm this person. But I will try to, do what I can do and just learn probably also from this experience. Yeah.
Magda, have you all used any CSS frameworks, or are there any that sound really interesting to you?
I usually use Bootstrap and that's it. So yeah.
I've used Bootstrap before learning React. With React, I've used Material UI, which has a lot of good features, and the learning curve wasn't too steep. One of my complaints about it while using it was, and this wasn't like, I don't know everything about MUI, but the company that I was interning with, like their use of it was they style a lot of things with MUI elements in line with the React elements. And just for me personally, that I found that to make the code feel kind of bloated and distracting. It made it difficult to kind of separate, like, in the code what was happening from a logic perspective versus a style perspective. And so that was kind of something I didn't care much about MUI. And generally speaking, I like, when I was learning React, some people were saying, here's how you style things like with inline components versus here's how you have a separate CSS file. One of the only things I really have a strong opinion of is that I think they should be as separate as possible. Have one that, have your class names naturally in your JSX and a different document for your CSS. And then if you need to have, conditionals within the JSX that say like, if this is true, then that style or stuff like that. I found that that's the most legible. Again, just my opinion. And I'm, as far as like this project goes, I'm very flexible on whatever works best with the rest of the team.
Sounds like you would hate Tailwind.
Okay, good to know.
Well, Tailwind is often used with Material UI. So
Right, but
that's
in terms of it,
interesting.
it
Yeah.
doesn't help with the cluttered problem. You will end up with 900 classes on every element that you have And you get kind of grody pretty
There's
quick.
a way to use it where you don't have to do that.
Fair enough. There's also a learning curve there too. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm curious, Arch, I really like your point about the style components. We actually use that at my work. So I think that's something that a lot more companies are starting to use. So if that's something that you guys want to get more experience on, I highly recommend it.
Grace, do people use styled components with frameworks ever? When I did it with raw CSS.
Yeah, because right now we're using a version of Material UI at work. It's just kind of layered within like our own like CSS framework. But we do use Material and then our own CSS and then style components. So yeah.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left. Do we want to kind of talk a little bit more tactically about how we want to approach and get together over the course of the next week? I mean, now we are dedicating the last 2 weeks to doing this, so keep that in mind. We don't necessarily need to get everything done this week. So if you want to like separate out some planning things and then do implementation, but there's also, hey, let's maybe try some stuff and work some stuff out in the first week too that could happen. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, maybe timeline wise, if we could kind of have decide on when we want to have certain things done by, just so we're kind of on track and, having enough time to like do the actual styling. I don't know if it's, maybe we spend a week or less planning and then the rest of the time like building.
I would say that going off of what you said, Jenny, maybe like Monday, latest Tuesday, we hopefully meet actually in person, but async if we have to, and decide like the kind of theme vibe sort of thing, and then what, if we're going to use a framework, which one, and like hopefully in that, by end of day Tuesday, we know both those things, and ideally even like a kind of super basic layout. I mean, I don't think it should take that long to make the layout because it's essentially like a single page with like 3 views, so I feel like that's also something that once we decide the kind of feel, we could probably say, yeah, I would say that could be our first goal, to meet and decide those 3 things, and then that way we can actually start building hopefully this week or styling.
Yeah, I'm into it.
While I have you guys here, do you have a preference for office hours? Because I'm open all week.
I'm more flexible during the daytime versus evening times. So I don't know if that, well, maybe if you're on East Coast time, that might work for you. I don't know if you work East Coast hours though.
I do work East Coast hours, but I can probably schedule for like my lunch break. And then have that be office hours. So I'll just send a doodle and unless you guys have a preference already now. But I'm like I said, I'm totally open.
All right. Well, I say let's keep conversations about where things. Let's do that in Slack. And we'll keep kind of up on how we want to get things going. Like I said, Grace is gonna officially run office hours later, but that being said, I know me and I will speak for Jeremiah here and say that he will also happily hop on at any time that we need to kind of answer and deal with some questions. So do not feel shy about reaching out to any of us and saying like, hey, can we get together now and do some stuff, and talk some things through. We'll be glad to help you out. Obviously the Zoom room, keep using it whenever you feel like, and we'll get things kind of taken care of. Otherwise, the most important rule that I want you to follow is to have fun. So, this is a thing that we want to enjoy. And honestly, making the app yours, putting your stamp on it, and getting to feel like you built the thing that you wanted to build is one of the best parts about being a software engineer. And this is really, I want to, like, feel free to, like, chase that a bit and go and get out there and because it feels good to, like, put thing on a web and point at people like, hey, you can go and click this over here and see, look what I did. So it's really what we're trying to achieve at this point. And then lastly, before we wrap up, we can talk about doing a debug session. I think I'm going to stop the recording and we'll discuss that kind of after, just as a post-tactical thing. Before I stop, any last closing thoughts before we head out for the week?
Just
Put
want
a
to
poll on, oh,
go ahead.
I put a poll on Slack for the devs to pick a time. So if y'all could vote before you log off for today, then we can find a time.
Perfect.
I just want to say I'm just really proud of all of you guys and in awe of your growth. I think especially I've noticed the leadership that each of you has taken on throughout this cohort, and I think you guys are doing tremendously. So just keep that in mind. If you ever feel like you're having a down day, I think that you guys are doing a great job individually.
Awesome. All right.
Just as far as planning that debug goes, I gotta split. But if y'all have that conversation on Slack, I'm gonna have my laptop with me in about a half an hour. I'll be able to like maybe say like when I'd be available to jump on that as well, because I've noticed some things that I think could use just a little bit of tweaking, some odd behaviors
Sure.
and stuff. So yeah, if that doesn't help the process, but without that, I will be making my exit.
Sure. I'll open up a thread. Let's talk in that in Slack, and we'll find time to work through that. If anyone's interested, we'll get it taken care of.
Cool.
All right.
Take care, folks.
Closing it up. Have fun, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.